is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update. Well, the Brewers pitchers and catchers just reported to spring training yesterday, and we already know who the opening day starter will be. Badger Pat Murphy wasted no time in saying Freddie Peralta would get the ball for a second straight opening day last year with 6 innings, allowing just 1 run and struck out 8 over the Mets. Even he was caught by surprise when Murphy told him yesterday.
Coming out from workout, he just told me that, like, hey, I just did this. I was like, he was smiling, he's smiling his face, and it makes me happy. Knowing that it's gonna happen again, be able to keep doing this. Like, I want to keep it in my career. I don't know. You never know for how long it's gonna be, but it's something that I feel great about.
Peralta and the rest of the pitchers and catchers going to hold their first official workout tomorrow. Rest of the team slated to join them on Monday. First game of the spring, February 22nd. Turning to the NFL, they released the names of more than 300 players that will attend the NFL Combine in Indianapolis later this month. It includes 3 Badgers, offensive lineman Joe Huber and Jack Nelson, along with safety Hunter Wohler. Those pro hopefuls that didn't get an invite there, going to be able to show off their stuff to scouts during Wisconsin's Pro Day next month.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
If you're interested in a rewarding career with a strong Wisconsin company, Rural Mutual Insurance is looking to add to their growing team of successful employees and agents. Apply online today at ruralmutual.com/careers.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, Wisconsin hit the practice floor today to continue getting ready for a huge game at number 7 Purdue on Saturday. Both clubs are in the fight for a Big Ten title. Purdue's at 11-3 in second place. Badgers at 9-4 in fourth place. Tip on Saturday is at noon. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, print.
2-point edge after the 2 free throws from Brooke Lopez. Edwards, that's a 3-pointer. This is for the lead. Rips it down. Kuzma with a big defensive rebound. Game over. Time runs out. The Bucks survive in Mini.
Last game before the break, proud of our group for being resilient. Basketball game on, we stuck with it, and now we get a chance to rest. But big second half of the season coming up, man. Let's get it, man. Go Bucks.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Some Bucks audio, the final sequence from Lisa Byington on the FanDuel Sports Network. Bucks holding on, literally holding on, winning by 2. Anthony Edwards had a step back 3 to win it. Clanked, as many of his shots did last night. And the Bucks with no Giannis, no Dame, they hold on to win. A nice surprise last night. So I actually want to begin with that. We'll throw open the NBA Lounge for a couple of minutes. And if you have any thoughts on the Bucks, now is the time. I get some tweets. Oh, ever since you started doing the show with Bill, you've changed. You never talk Bucks anymore. Well, over the last year or so, I mean, Bucks losing the first round 2 years in a row, it's gonna stamp down the energy and the excitement and the interest level just a little bit. I keep saying we talk about the Bucks when they give us something to talk about. I think today we definitely have something to talk about. That was a nice win last night. So I want to discuss that for a couple of minutes. A real poo-poo platter of things to cover tonight. I love shows like this because there's a football story today. The Jets officially putting out a statement saying we are moving on from Aaron Rodgers. So I want to talk about that. And also a baseball story. Alex Bregman last night signing with the Red Sox. Now, this is not a Red Sox show, but one of the finalists for Alex Bregman, along with the Tigers and the Jays and the Cubs. Those are the finalists. The Cubs were one of them. And I think the Brewers are in a great spot in the Central. I don't love everything they've done this offseason, which is to say they've done nothing this offseason, and I don't like that. If the Cubs had gotten Alex Bregman, that changes the way I feel a little bit about that rivalry specifically and the division as a whole. So Brewers fans and I guess fans of the Pirates and the Cardinals and the Reds, for what it's worth, dodged a little bit of a bullet there. So I want to talk about that as well. A great variety of topics across different sports. So tonight should be really fun, very interesting. My name is Grant Bills. This is the Wisco Sports Show. Happy to take your texts and calls. As always, we'll get into that in segment number 2. And the live stream up on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Twitter at Wisco Grant. Shameless plug for the newest addition to the show, by the way, before we go any further. Last night, we had our first run-in with our new reporter who's going to cover Division III athletics in the state of Wisconsin for the show, Dale Jorgensen, who writes for the Nakusa Times, longtime, highly decorated veteran journalist. And I see him mixing it up on Twitter today with some listeners and some fans of different WEAC programs around the state. So again, follow him. I'm on Twitter at Wisco Grant. You could follow Dale, and I guess I'll throw his graphic up on the screen if you're watching on the live stream. Dale Jorgensen, the Nakusa Register, the Nakusa Times. It's a real newspaper. No need to look it up. WEAC Dale. Go ahead and follow him while you're on Twitter following me and watching the live stream there as well. I want to start with the NBA Lounge. I did not plan to watch the Bucks last night. I told you this at the end of the show. I'm like, I'm not rushing home to watch the Bucks. No Dame, no Giannis. I was going to watch Platteville and Eau Claire. It was a big game in the WEAC last night. Number 3 in the conference versus number 1 in the conference. Platteville, number 3 in the nation, I believe, as well. Eau Claire's been playing really well. Platteville was a lot better. That game was a little bit of a bust at the Sonatag, but I was excited to watch that. And then last night I was staying with a buddy in Madison because the weather was nasty, and he wanted to watch the Bucks. I'm like, all right, yeah, let's watch the Bucks. And I really enjoyed the game. Didn't necessarily expect to, but I really enjoyed it start to finish. Obviously, they won. So, well, I enjoyed it. Of course I did. They won. So easy to say I enjoyed the game when they upset the Wolves in their building with no Dame and no Giannis, but it's a little more than that. It's a little deeper than that, okay? If you can remember back, if you're an everyday listener, what did I say on Tuesday, the last time we talked Bucks? It was the day after they lost to the Warriors at home. Giannis didn't play in that game, but Dame did. And down the stretch, it just kind of fell apart, and the Warriors pulled away. And Steph got hot. That'll happen. You know, Jimmy Butler took 20-some-odd free throws or something. Like, that will happen. But what was my complaint on Tuesday when we talked about the Bucks for a couple minutes? My complaint was when Giannis and Dame aren't on the floor, whether it's injury or in the case of Monday night's game, Giannis was hurt, but Dame's healthy. He was just on the bench in that game. And when I watch the Bucks without Giannis and without Dame, whether it's for entire games or just stretches of individual games, it doesn't look like a professional outfit. They don't seem to really have a plan or an idea or a friggin' clue. I believe on Tuesday, I said, they look like a G League team. It's messy. And it's like, okay, so there's Bobby Portis and then Pat Connaughton, and I guess Kevin Porter Jr. is here now, and Kyle Kuzma's the number one option. Like, it just doesn't work, right? And no team is going to be great without their star players. You take Steph and Jimmy Butler off the floor for the Warriors, it's a different team. You take LeBron and Luke off the floor for the Lakers, different team. You take Tatum and Brown off the Celtics to a lesser degree, it's a different team, right? I'm not saying that every team in basketball looks awesome without their stars, and then the Bucks, well, you take away the Bucks' good players and they're a mess. No, obviously every team will look worse if you take their best players off the floor. But with the Bucks, it's like, man, I want to see a framework. I want to see structure. I want to see a foundation. I want to watch and say, well, they're missing their star power, but you can tell there's a program. You can tell they have a strategy. They've built something that's sturdy enough to at least play competitive basketball when their stars aren't on the floor. And in the early Bud years, that was absolutely the case. When Giannis would miss a game or Chris would miss a game, or I guess early on it was Bledsoe, but then later on with Drew, like if you took those guys off the floor, you could expect a competitive, competent basketball game. I was going to tune in and see Bucks basketball, and that hasn't been the case this year. Well, last night, they played competitive, focused basketball. I'm like, they have a clue. They're driven. They're dialed in. This is clearly a game they want to win. This is a game they're trying to win. They had a plan. This is Doc Rivers after the game talking about the team's defense. He said, we wanted to hold them to under 100. That was the goal of the game.
It's funny. We had a goal. We set a goal, and we didn't get it. But our goal was to hold them under 100. And they got 101. That's why the guys were like, no, that was a goal for us going into the game. We knew scoring, but the offense that we had out would be rough. But we thought we could really win the game with a defensive effort, and that's what we did.
So I think there's a little Doc showmanship in that comment, right? Oh, the guys were like, no, we held them. I don't know that they were that bent out of shape. I think that's a little bit of Doc's personality. That's just Doc being Doc. Also, why does his voice sound like wet Crocs stepping across tiles? Like, I know maybe it's the mic. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was the room. I know his voice is worn down. Like, that's a thing. But why is there's like squelching in between? What is that? Is that Doc's voice or is that something else? Right, but Doc talking about, we really wanted to settle in on defense. We wanted to have a defensive-led effort. They had a plan. They had an idea of what they were going to do. And I think that defense and that focus and that intensity was part of the reason the Wolves were so poor offensively. I also think they just had a horrible shooting night. They finished 39 of 103 from the floor, 37% from the floor, 22% from three. Anthony Edwards specifically, oh, this is horrible. 10 of 33 from the floor, 4 of 17 from three. Now, I understand it's 2025. The team that takes more threes, makes more threes, is going to win. I understand that, or win most of the time. I'd like to think that there's a little bit more to the game of basketball, even in 2025 in this age of analytics. I'd like to believe there's a little bit more to the game than, well, whoever makes more threes is going to win. Like I want to believe the sport's a little bit deeper than that, but oftentimes the team that takes and makes more threes pretty likely to win the game. I know that three-pointers are important. At some point, I wonder if Anthony Edwards is like, you know what, maybe I should just drive the ball. Maybe I should stop shooting so many threes. Like, bro took 17 threes, made 4 of it. I mean, I could take 25, 30 threes. I'm going to hit a couple of them. You know, maybe not with NBA defense, but you get my point. Like, if you let me chuck up a bunch of them, at least I'm going to bank a few of them in. Like 4 of 17 from three. Again, part of that was the Bucks defense, or at least I'd like to think so. They were flying around. I think they were doing some nice things defensively. Brook at the rim did a really good job, especially late, helping them secure that game. But at some point, it's like, hey, the jump shooting, it's not working tonight. It's not happening. So maybe drive a little bit, try to get to the rack, try to get to the rim. Bro took 33 jump shots and 17 threes. So I think the Wolves had an off night. They were going to have an off night for the Bucks to be able to win. This isn't some inspirational tale of the Bucks' spirit and will going in and winning a game. Like, the Wolves shot poorly. Part of that is the Bucks defense, but part of that is a little bit of luck. I think the Bucks were probably due for some luck, and I give them a lot of credit because the product appeared to be focused. It appeared to be organized. And my complaint earlier this week when they lost to the Warriors on Monday night without Giannis, but they had Dame. Man, anytime Dame went to the bench, it's like, you guys don't have a freaking clue. They appeared to have a freaking clue last night. Okay, nice. And in the abstract, a nice bit of momentum to go into the All-Star break. Even had they lost last night's game, I still think, like, if the Wolves make one more bucket at the end and just steal it and just hang on to win at home, I still, for the most part, would have been pretty impressed by the Bucks' effort. It's nice to put the W on the schedule, though. You know what I mean? Like, that was going to be my worst nightmares. The Bucks lose last night, and then I come in here today and I have to compliment them for their fight and the way that they played, because all too often in the NBA, we just minimize the result. Well, you can't worry too much about that game. It's the second game of a back-to-back. Well, you can't worry about that game. They didn't have this person. Well, you can't worry about the result of that game. That was their 4th game in 6 days or the end of a road trip. Like, we do so much legwork as NBA fans and media members talking about why this game didn't matter, this game didn't matter, this game didn't matter. I want more games to matter. So I'm glad that we get to celebrate the Bucks for a nice effort, shorthanded last night, while also putting a W on the schedule. That still means something to me. I am not someone that likes to cast away results for some deeper meaning. Well, it was back-to-back. Well, a road trip. Well, they were without this person. At some point, a win is good. It's good that they won the game. I'm glad that they won the game, despite all the mitigating factors. So anytime in the NBA, we can find ways to emphasize and prioritize the result of a given game, that's good. That's better for fans. That's better for the product. That's better for talk shows like this one. Also, shout out to Gary Trent Jr. That guy's a dog. Like, he had some edge. He had some competitive. There was some fierceness from him last night. And he shot the ball well, probably a little bit better than you could expect. Like, I think the Bucks were, on both ends, offensively and defensively, benefits of an outlier shooting night from both teams again. And certainly Gary Trent Jr. is a part of that. But just watching his body language and the way that that's a game he wanted. That was not a guy playing with the attitude of final game before the All-Star break, on the road, no Giannis, no day. That he wanted to win that basketball game. And I like seeing that in their eyes. I like seeing that on their faces. And I'm glad that they were able to hold on and win. Had they lost by a point, big picture, it probably didn't really change the takeaway from the game. But again, I want these games to matter. I want the results to matter, because we're getting farther and farther away from results on a night-to-night basis mattering in the NBA. Cone Roller brought this up earlier this week. This is twice now that I'm basing a show topic around a comment from a caller from Cone Roller. I think earlier this week he asked the question, and this is an interesting NBA thing to just think about. Maybe the rest of the week or this weekend, you're laying in bed, you're getting ready to go to sleep, just something to stew on if you're a basketball fan. I think this NBA trade deadline was as important of a week to the sport of basketball than any sport that any league has had in a long time. Because how many segments on shows that talk about the NBA? Colin Cowherd talks about the NBA. First things first, Nick Wright loves talking about the NBA. They do some really good segments on that show. Obviously, shows like The Jump, or The Jump's not on anymore, but NBA Today, like there have been NBA-driven shows this year, shows that, like the NBA, don't look for reasons to rip the NBA like many shows do. These shows have been talking about what's wrong with basketball. How can we fix basketball? Why are the ratings down? The injuries are a problem. Do we need to change the three-pointer to a four-pointer? Do we need to move the line? Like a lot of these types of conversations. Not good, not good, not good, not good at all. This last week, fired up shows to talk about the NBA and to discuss the league. It really, I think this trade deadline, I don't want to say it saved the NBA season, but it gave it a swift kick in the pants. And I'm confused still as to why Dallas traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers. At least I'm confused with the way they did it, the timing that they did it. But you know what? During Super Bowl week and the week after the Super Bowl, it has people talking about the league. It has people interested in the league. It had people tuning in. It wasn't on Saturday night. What was it? Monday night? When Luka and LeBron made their debut together, and then Dirk is there. We're talking about that. Jimmy Butler to the Warriors makes Steph Curry more relevant, which is better for the game, which is better for NBA fans, better for shows like this, right? And there were lots of other moves, like Brandon Ingram going to the Raptors. He got extended, like just a big shakeup. Even if it doesn't change who's going to win the title, even if Boston wins the title again, even if that's where we end up, the journey, right? Talking about these teams, talking about the league throughout the year. I think this year specifically, the NBA, this league really needed this trade deadline. Maybe it's a bit dramatic to say the trade deadline saved the season, but, you know, considering some of the conversations and some of the points that were being made on shows that are predisposed to like the NBA, there's lots of sports talk shows that, you know, treat the NBA as a punchline, and I'm guilty of that too when it's deserved, right? But there's lots of shows that like talking basketball. I want to watch these regular season games and get something from them. Those shows were kind of yelling red alert about the state of the NBA. And this last week, maybe it's not an overreaction to say that this trade deadline saved this NBA season, because it got everyone to pay attention at the end of football, got us focused on basketball. And now I think with Luka in LA and Jimmy Butler, what went on there, and Chris Middleton, I don't think the big time NBA fan is like, well, Chris Middleton in Washington, Kyle Kuzma in Milwaukee, but it was something. Shake the snow globe. Do something. Even if it's wrong, even if it doesn't matter, just do something. I think in the case of the NBA in 2025, activity is good. What's the expression? Don't confuse activity for achievement or something like this. This might be between the Lakers and the Warriors and the Bucks. This might be activity for the sake of activity, but I think for this league in this season, activity is achievement. Just shake the snow globe. Just jarble up the whiteboard. Just do something to wake people up and to get people talking about your sport. And I do think saved might be a bridge too far, but I think this trade deadline was absolutely massive for the NBA in a time and in a season where it desperately needed something massive. Okay, let's take a break. If you have any thoughts on this, the Bucks or the NBA, now is the time. Fire away, okay? I'll get your calls next. Towards the bottom of the hour and towards hour number 2, we're going to get into Aaron Rodgers and what the Jets said today. I think Alex Bregman to the Red Sox is a big deal for Brewers fans in the NL Central because it means the Cubs didn't get Alex Bregman. So we'll talk about that. I have some audio from Craig Counsell as well from spring training, from Jesse Rogers, Mr. Swinging for the Lake himself. So all that's coming up. But if you have basketball takes, now is the time. 608-321-1670. We'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show right back.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You know, we had a nice mix out there, new guys versus our standard guys. Obviously, we were missing Dame and Giannis, who are huge components of what we do. So it was great to just see everyone feel each other out, you know, get a good sense of who we are. But, you know, when it boiled down to it, we just had each other's back. We were communicating, we were making the right plays, we were playing with energy, and it was just a great win to have going forward.
It's Brook Lopez last night talking about especially some of his newer teammates. Kevin Porter Jr. has been a real weapon since the Bucks have acquired him. Kyle Kuzma as well. I was watching with a buddy last night who's a sports fan. He's not a sicko like some of you. I'm paid to be a sicko. I have to be a sicko. Some of you do it for pleasure, which I love. That's why I can do this job. He's not a sicko, but he kept making comments like, Kuzma's fast. Kuzma, and basically I kept saying, yeah, he's not ancient like Chris Middleton coming off 2 ankle surgeries. Darnell the Chump, again, kind of furthering this point. Chris Middleton off the Bucks hurts me as a fan. So many great memories from an availability, athleticism, payroll, and 2026 team building perspective. It makes perfect sense. Yeah, Kuzma's not anything special, but he's not an old man. The dude can move and cut and jump and probably play more than twice a week, 22 minutes a night. Brook Lopez, by the way, last night, I had to double check this before coming back. He only took 5 shots, 2 threes. You know, if he can do what he did last night, which is have some big defensive moments down the stretch to help clear possessions, deter shots, or he had a couple big rebounds last night too. And a lot of people talk about, well, you know, Brook, he doesn't rebound. The statistics would tell you that Brook Lopez contributes to rebounding, even if he himself is not the one rebounding the ball. Last night, he straight up had a couple clutch rebounds too. So it was a cool game. I thought Gary Trent Jr. brought this intense, like competitiveness and intensity that really, I think, drove the bus last night. And this team wanted to get a win going into the All-Star break, and I think that matters. That was a really nice win last night. Obviously, we're talking about it. I probably wouldn't be leading with the Bucks today if there wasn't something significant last night. So if you have a take on the Bucks, the NBA trade deadline, which Cone brought this up earlier this week, I think it's a great point. I don't know that it saved the NBA season, but man, did the NBA season need a trade deadline like that. Just shake the snow globe. And even if a couple months from now, the snow settles in the same spot and the Celtics win the title, okay. But this midseason shakeup, fodder for the talk shows, fodder for social media, just really important and huge, and in a moment where the league really needed it. So if you have a thought on the Bucks or basketball, now's the time. Otherwise, we're going to talk in a little bit about Aaron Rodgers being jettisoned by the Jets, made official today, and Alex Bregman, big NBA or MLB story last night, signing with the Red Sox as well. I want to discuss that. 608-321-1670 to your calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Steve.
Steve, where are you calling from, Steve?
Madison.
Oh, what's up, Steve? Welcome.
Yeah, well, they were talking today. I don't know if you saw the article, but before the trade deadline, Dallas did inquire on see if Giannis was available for a trade with, you know.
Would you have
And
done
then
that?
It was no. They totally shot him down. But it was the Bucks and Minnesota were the other two teams involved in trying to, unload Doncic. And the reason Dallas wants to get rid of him because they don't want to pay $300 and some million for him in free agency, So
Well, the Supermax, yeah, it's a big bill, but Steve, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it. That's their franchise. That player is their franchise. He's the jerseys, he's the imagery on the walls and in the mirror. He is what Giannis is to Milwaukee, but to Dallas. So that $350 million, to me, that's not only money that you're paying for a player, but you're paying for an icon. You're investing in the interest level and your fan involvement into your franchise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Would you have paid him $350 million?
No.
Interesting. Would you pay any player $300 million, or is it just Luka specifically?
Well, Luka, I mean, there are a lot of questions about his, physicality, his, staying in shape and stuff like that. And I don't know, it just didn't seem as committed as, like Giannis is, and to some other players. But
yeah,
I also had a Brewers question.
Yeah.
Explain to me how when, for revenue sharing, each Major League Baseball team gets $150 million from Major League Baseball, and why the Brewers only have a payroll of $99 million this year.
It's a good question. This is what we talked about with Felger at the Super Bowl last week. It's a great call, Steve. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening in Madison on WOZN. And by the way, to our Madison audience, WOZN is your new home in the Madison area for NASCAR racing, which starts this weekend. But there's a qualifier race for Daytona tonight, and it's going to air, and I guess I can check just to make sure. Ebo was telling me about this. It's going to air starting at 5. So to our Madison listeners, you're going to have to listen on other means. You're going to have to pull up the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. That's very easy. You can listen that way. You can listen the WKTY app, Sports Talk 105.1 in Eau Claire. You just won't be able to listen on Madison coming up at 5. So, Steve, thank you for wanting to remind folks. Because once 5 o'clock hits, I won't be able to pass that message along. You'll just be hearing NASCAR. But back to the point about Luka first, and then we can do the Brewers. Okay, so you don't want to pay a player $350 million because you're worried about his conditioning. Okay. He's 25. He just took you to a finals. If some point down the line you want to trade him for a haul because you don't think he can get you over the top, fine. Do that when he's 29. Don't do that when he's 25. And Steve, like I told you, that's not just an investment in a player on the court. That's an investment in having a player that's going to sell jerseys, that's going to go on the pictures, on the billboards. Like, that's your franchise. And that's why Mavericks fans have reacted so negatively. You traded away a great player, sure, like the Brewers traded away a great player in Hader. We still bring it up, but we weren't protesting in front of the stadium, right? We weren't getting thrown out of games for yelling at David Stearns because guess what? Josh Hader wasn't the Brewers. He was just a great player that they traded away at a time that seemed really inconvenient, and it coincided with their downfall of the season. They failed to make the playoffs. With Luka, fans are so pissed because that's their identity as a fan. That's their everything. The NBA, it's a superstar-driven league. Those Mavericks fans are Mavericks fans, sure, but in losing Luka, they lose the franchise. It'd be like if the Bucks traded Giannis. It's like, okay, we're still Bucks fans, but all of the murals and all of the billboards, the Murray, it's gone. He is the heart and soul, just like Luka was. So, yeah, $350 million you're paying for a player who's still only 25, but that's also your franchise. That's your everything. So it's not just an investment in a player, it's an investment in the whole thing. On the revenue sharing, I don't know what to tell you, Steve. I don't expect the Brewers to spend $300 million. I expect them to spend a little bit more than they're currently spending. They lost Willy Adames, and they really didn't do anything to replace him. Now, I know they're banking on internal development because I know the Brewers just aren't okay with getting worse, so they must feel a certain way about Oliver Dunn, which I understand. There's a lot of tools there. The smart Brewers people tell us there's tools. I believe there's tools. Caleb Durbin, who knows? Maybe they really like him. Maybe there's some quantum leap angle to be found. We'll hear from Pat Murphy more throughout spring training. He's never short on words, so who knows? Maybe we'll get a little bit more clarity on their plan at third base. But could you spend $10 million, a little bit more, a little bit less on Ha-Sung Kim or Yohan Moncada? These are short-term deals, the exact type of players on pillow deals that the Brewers really jive with. That's the situation that the Brewers are looking for. How can we find someone who's not getting the big-time deal they want? They need a place to park it for a year or two, like Rhys Hoskins. I know that didn't work out, but I still commend the Brewers for doing it. It could work out this year. I remain hopeful that it will work out this year. He's not going to be prime Prince Fielder, but can he be better than, I mean, for God's sake, they're playing Owen Miller at first base not that long ago, so I'll take it. I don't know. On the revenue sharing thing, it's a great question. It's a great question, Steve. I don't know what to tell you. Wish you had an answer. We talked about this with Felger a little bit last week, and I'm seeing if I saved that audio somewhere. I'm pretty organized. Let me see if I can find it. 10th Nagler, Felger on three-peat. I'll find it over the break. We can play that coming back. And why not? Let's get right into baseball. Seeing since, Steve, you took us there. Alex Bregman signing with the Red Sox last night. I think it's a huge deal because he didn't sign with the Cubs. That's what we care about, and we can discuss that next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think all owners should be, they should be really scrutinized. So let's scrutinize. It's Anastasio, right?
Yep, Mark Anastasio.
Well, maybe we should scrutinize them. I mean, there's plenty of small market teams that just make money hand over fist. Does he collect revenue sharing money?
I'm sure on some level his net worth is like $600 million.
Okay, so you know what? Maybe I would get on him. Because in Milwaukee, I get it, small market. I'm not asking you to lose gobs of money, but I would also say
to be reasonable.
If you're in it to make a big profit, you're in it for the wrong reason.
Sure.
Like go back to the whatever. Is he venture capital or is he
probably
hedge fund? I can't remember how he whatever. Go back to finance.
Sure.
If it's all about the profit margin, then don't own a small market baseball team.
Sure.
So if you're going to treat it as a passion play, and it's you're not just selling widgets, then don't expect the same profit margin that you would with your other businesses. You should be prepared to take a loss now and then. You should be prepared to spend like you wouldn't spend in other businesses. So maybe I would get on him. If he collects revenue sharing, like, I don't know. I mean, they've been so close and so good for so long. Good. I mean, I don't mean great, but they're on a nice run here.
A really nice run.
With a little extra money, are they that much better? I mean, so maybe I would get on him.
That's from last week. I'm squeezing every ounce of run out of some of those interviews from last week at Radio Row that I can. That's Mike Felger. He does sports radio in Boston, but he's originally from Milwaukee. And I asked him, look, you guys hound the Red Sox because they have more money than God. You pressure him to spend. If you were to do sports radio in Milwaukee, you would apply pressure and you'd want your team to spend and compete, but you would know in doing so that they have a limited amount of money. The Brewers just don't have that much money, especially compared to the Red Sox. By the way, when it comes to pressuring owners, keep the heat on owners, well, what does that matter? Well, I don't know that the Red Sox sign Alex Bregman, if not for the browbeating that the media on that side of the country has been giving them over going cheap year after year after year. That ownership group has a pile of money. And I seriously think part of the reason that Bregman is there, and that's what I want to talk about next, is because the media just hounds them and the fans hound them. Now, we can yell into the abyss about the Brewers all they want. That doesn't change the fact that they don't have that much money. Steve called from Madison before the break and said, hey, if they take in $150 million revenue sharing every year, how is it that their payroll's only $100 million? And my response to Steve was, you know what, Steve? That's a great question. I wish I had a perfect answer to give you. And I did some research over the break. It's why I like having a 5-minute break, is I can really go and find some details. Their payroll in terms of what they're actually going to pay is going to be closer to $150 million than $100 million. But your point stands. And when I say did research, I just texted Kurt and asked him, like, hey, this is what a caller asked me. What should I say? And he's like, well, first, that's a good point by the caller. He's barking up the right tree. But when you break down the actual money that's going out the door, the actual cash that's being paid to players, it's going to be closer to $150 million. That's just not always how it's classified. In any event, they reduced payroll. So if the reported payroll or the official number has gone from, 110 to 100, even if their actual payroll has maybe gone from 160 to now 150, it's still gone down, right? And I think that's where we should start. That's what we should talk about. They signed one major league free agent this offseason. They did it yesterday, and I can't even remember his name. I'm pretty sure it's Tyler Anderson. What difference does it make? I've never heard of him, okay? So the Brewers decreasing payroll, bad. we can talk about the details. We can talk about the little things. We've done this conversation already this week. It's not really one that we need to do again. I want to talk about how the Red Sox got Bregman, not because this is a Red Sox show, but because this is a Brewers show, and the Brewers were in the same division as the Cubs, and the Cubs were one of the finalists to get Alex Bregman. And I thought that maybe they would, because talk about having more money than God. The Ricketts have a ton of money, and they spend more than the Brewers, but I don't know that they usually spend the amount of money that's actually at their disposal. I had a friend in high school who'd always say that. I thought it was a funny expression. At their disposal, right? And Alex Bregman, they're coming up short along with the Jays and the Tigers. He ends up in Boston. Here's Craig Counsell today. This audio posted, this video as well posted by Jesse Rogers. Craig Counsell's bestie. They're swinging for the lake. Remember that?
Well, I think it's like, look, it's a reality. So it's one of those deals where, you're interested in a really good player, and I think someone else got him and you're disappointed and you move on. It's just how on the field, I think that's how you have to approach it. And, I think that's how I approach it.
Did you not ever get too far ahead of yourself, knowing that this was out of your control most of the way, and that you just had to wait for it to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of getting updates like everybody else, heard the news like everybody else.
So this is from Passan earlier today. Alex Bregman had a variety of offers. The Red Sox had a big number, $40 million a year before deferrals. The Tigers had years and dollars, $6 and $171 million, also with deferrals. The Cubs at $4 for $120 had neither years, dollars, nor AAV. Tough to win when you trail in all three. So what Passan is saying, the Red Sox offered years. They offered a high annual value, right? Certain number of defer, right? They're categorizing what you can offer a player in free agency. Can you give me years? Can you give me money per year, right? Can you give me money that's not deferred? So I get that in the here and now, average annual, right? All of these different categories. His point, and maybe you understood it, and I'm explaining this for no reason, is the Cubs were behind in all of these categories, average annual value and years, right? They weren't offering the longest deal. They weren't offering the highest average annual value. Now, the deferrals, Buster Only reported, they're significant. He tweeted yesterday, reported, the present day value of this contract is expected to be assessed in the range of $90 million for 3 years. That's basically what it's shaking out to. I am both surprised and not surprised that the Red Sox did this. The Red Sox have gobs of money. There's no reason they can't sign deals like this all the time. They just haven't. Ever since they won their last World Series, right? They let Mookie Betts leave the building, and they've kind of operated like the Brewers. Sign 1-year deals and say, we got young guys coming up. Basically trying to hit on 1 year, get hot at the right time, and luck into a World Series, which for a team like the Brewers, I actually think is a good strategy. I wouldn't come out and say it like David Stearns did. I wouldn't come out and say it. We're just going for bites at the apple. I wouldn't verbalize it, but I think it's a smart strategy. It's less smart for the Red Sox, who have the money to go get guys like this. Now, they traded for Garrett Crochet, and I think that was a smart move. 1-year deal for Walker Buehler, which is a smart move. They're throwing some heft at the thing. This is an adult big-time deal with years and with money. Like, no bones about it. This is a big market move. And I was more interested in reading reaction from Cubs folks today. Sam Olber, Locked on Cubs, and I messaged him today. He's not available. I'm gonna try to get him on soon because I would love to talk about some of the offseason comings and goings in Chicago, and also just his thoughts on the Central. He's been an awesome baseball guest when he's been on. I actually really like his podcast, Locked on Cubs. Bruce Levine tweeted today, Hoyer was direct about the fact the money was laid out for Bregman only. Right? So the general manager of the Cubs, or president of baseball ops, whatever Jed Hoyer's title is, basically said, yeah, we made Bregman this offer, but this money was available for Bregman only. This was not, we have X number of dollars to spend. Let's see if Bregman wants it. Now we'll move on and see if no, it was just for Bregman. He said they may do a few minor things, but the squad is basically what you see now. Maybe looking for a backup center fielder, third baseman, first baseman. Maybe those things are on the radar. So the Cubs team is basically set. I think they got better. Kyle Tucker is great. That's a big-time addition. I've also seen all of this conversation about how Wrigley was particularly rough on hitters last year, right? You won't see a year like that at Wrigley ever again. So a player like Bellinger, who came back for 1 year, it just didn't work out. They basically had to ship him off and entice the team to take him. I don't even remember where the Cubs traded him to, right? But Bregman comes into Wrigley, or would have come into Wrigley, after a year where offense is way down. Like if I'm an offensive player after last season, I don't want to go hit it Wrigley. What's funny is a lot of individuals are talking about, Cubs people are talking about how offense is going to be back at Wrigley in 2025. Well, then doesn't that mean that the pitching should regress? Like, what does that mean for Imanaga and Jamison Tyone, who a lot of people thought kind of had a one-off year last year? I mean, what does that mean for old friend Colin Ray, who's going down to pitch there? More from Bruce Levine. Cubs Jed Hoyer said he had many, many emails and texts with owner Tom Ricketts about money availability for Alex Bregman. Cubs will not defer money any longer on contract offers. The team is still paying Jason Hayward and John Lester on deferred deals. That jumped out to me and I bookmarked it. You couldn't call the owner? You could get him on the phone directly? I don't like emailing anyone if I don't have to. Just ask people who come on Bill's show. I blow up their phone with texts. You have to respond to a text right away. You can't set an email. An email you could set to the side. Well, I'll get to that, after lunch. A text, that's on your personal phone. Let alone a call. You're asking someone to pick up the phone. Jesse Rogers. I'm just sharing some information from the Cubs' point of view because, again, that's what matters. I think part of the narrative with Bregman, and this is what we were just talking about, Bregman and the Cubs, was how crappy it was for hitters like Cody Bellinger last season at Wrigley. Notice how he didn't opt out. Bregman clearly needed a bigger guarantee in years 5 and 6, and ultimately money in order to sign in Chicago. But the funny thing is like the Cubs have the money to blow a guy away. The Cubs have the money to say, oh, you need more guarantees, you need more years, we can give it to you. We're the Cubs. They just don't really operate like that. One more tweet that I bookmarked. This is from Corey Friedman of the, how do you say it? Chgo, CHGO. This small rant. I know Denver has this, Chicago has this, these local sports blogs, and they're good sports people. Like, it's good content. The thing that bothers me isn't it's this trend in branding in 2025 where you don't come up with a name for something, you just take the vowels out. You just take the vowels out of the word. That's the name of the company. Like if this was, imagine if this show was just whisk, it was just WSC. What the? And we've already been doing this with artists on TikTok. SZA, I know there's a vowel in that. And I'm sure there's some deeper meaning behind that. Just like everything that Kendrick did on Sunday had some form of deeper meaning. This drives me nuts. There was a commercial in the Super Bowl for a company that was the same way, and I can't remember what it was. I'll Google it. Not a very effective one because I couldn't remember the name. I just know that there weren't any vowels in the name. But this is from Corey Friedman at CHGO. Chgo. Says, I care, but I don't know if I have the energy anymore to do the payroll ownership stuff. Tom should spend more. Organization is worth billions. Crane should be fired if he can't generate enough money in this market. Jed needs to be better than Milwaukee with $100 million more. I like that. I like the fact that Jed Hoyer is getting an additional $100 million and still couldn't really sniff the Brewers last year. And I think this year will be closer because I think Council's a good manager. I think they have good players. Kyle Tucker will help a lot. They lacked a superstar last year, and Council talked about that. There's a lot of guys who are middle of the road to above average players. But when you construct a roster of those types of guys, you need 2 or 3 of them to have career years in order to be a great team. They all had average or below average years last year. A guy like Kyle Tucker takes some of the luck out of it. I think this is the exchange between Craig Counsell and Jesse Rogers last year. I think I found it. I just want to listen to this for old time's sake.
Talking to the league and executive.
No, it's not. I'm going to try to find that audio. That's a bad take. Remember that? Swinging for the lake. That's your comment? Oh, that was good. I'm going to do some advanced searches in my files, see if I can't find that soundbite. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Any Brewers thoughts as well. I'll get to your text too, 608-321-1670. Back after this.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
That's your comment?
Well, yeah, I'm wondering about.
I think that's a bad take. I think that's a bad take. He's swinging for the lake. That's a bad take. It's a bad take.
Why is that? Why is that bad?
He's having a good at bat trying to hit the ball hard. It didn't work. The pitcher made a good pitch. He made an out.
Okay.
Come on, Jesse. Jesse. Okay. At the end, okay, Craig. Swinging for the lake. Christopher Morel, by the way, kind of Craig's boy last year. Not a great season. This is an anti-Council. This is an anti-Cubs. I'm fascinated with Alex Bregman ending up with the Red Sox. Pleased as a Brewers fan because that means he's not on the Cubs. And while here's the thing. Most big contracts that these guys sign, I think are bad contracts. Like the reason that these big contracts are signed by Philly, this one by Boston, it's been forever since they've signed a deal like this, but the Dodgers, Adames in San Francisco, that's not a good deal. This is going to age horribly. He's a fly ball reliant aging shortstop going to one of the biggest ballparks in baseball. But these teams are like, well, we got to spend money. We got to spend money, which I wish my team had that much money. You could just light it on fire. Trey Turner for 13 years. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a great contract all the way through. The Brewers gave Lorenzo Cain, 5 years? And by the middle of year 3, he was like, I'm out. And maybe the pandemic had something to do with that, but he's kind of out. Like, I'm anti-long-term deal. The thing is, some of these teams have so much money, they can sign a bad deal. It doesn't make a difference. They just want the player. They get the player, and they deal with the contract later because they have enough money. A couple of texts here, and I want to make sure I'm not missing any. 608-321-1670. This one just says, Bellinger went to the Yankees. Thank you, Bart. That's correct. Well, they traded him there, right? They shipped him off to clear some salary, but also, like, it didn't make sense for him to be there anymore. Anonymous Pete says, it's clear the owner is okay taking a step back this year. I think Brewers fans and radio commenters should as well. We're feeding the problem. Well, Pete, what do you want me to do? You want me to not talk baseball all summer? I can't do that. What do you want me to talk? What do you want me to talk about? You just want to win-loss the Packers schedule once a week the entire summer? That's 2 segments a week. Maybe I can stretch it out. First half of the season, pre-buy, post-buy. But no, we were talking about the Brewers. I do wonder, Council goes to the Cubs last year. I have theorized, I have posited, as have many, that Rhys Hoskins is here because Craig Council left the Brewers and embarrassed Mark Ottenassi. We said, well, screw you. You want a new challenge? You want to go somewhere with more resources? We'll go get Rhys Hoskins. Not that it worked out well, but the Brewers won anyways. I do wonder if now that the Brewers feel like they reestablished themselves, Murph won Manager of the Year, no egg on their face, Maybe if they were okay taking a little bit. I mean, they were obviously okay cutting payroll. They did. They cut payroll. It's not like they didn't have options at third base, cheaper, more affordable options. Yohan Moncada, Hassan Kimmer, the two I'm bringing up. I think I'm going to have to sneeze. So normally I'm really good at avoiding doing this on air. If I had some slap producer, I'd just say something while I sneeze. All right, it passed. Obviously, they were okay shedding payroll. They did shed payroll. And I wonder if the lack of their manager stabbing them in the back this time around, I wonder if that had something to do with it. I also think that they probably believe in their young talent, and they should. I like Churio, obviously, if he was that good as a rookie, imagine now when he's not trying to figure out how to play the major league game for the first time, how much better he could be. There's a lot of reasons to be excited, hopefully, about further internal development with lots of these guys, but I am not a fan personally of going into a season with, as I've said over and over again, Oliver Dunn and Caleb Durbin as the options at third base. I just don't think that's good enough, especially when you now don't have to pay Willy Adames, right? You have not an infusion of cash, but money coming off of your books. Not asking you to go, get Alex Bregman for 4 years. That was never going to happen, but yet other options at third base. Maybe they still have options. Maybe they'll bring in somebody. I don't know. Sal Frelick doesn't count. Not excited about that. Tyler in Massachusetts, Red Sox PECOTA standings went up to 80 wins, but still dead last in the AL East. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a loaded division with teams that want to spend too. Yankees are spending again. They've always spent, but now spending. And the Jays are just begging players to take their money. No one will oblige them. And then the Rays remain the Rays. But who did the Rays get? Rays signed Ha-Seong Kim for a 1+1 type of pillow deal, the exact type of deal that the Brewers like to sign. Yay. Tyler also says Red Sox charge $35 a month for the Nesson stream, and it's hot garbage. By the way, are you a YouTube TV subscriber? Because if you are, stop. They're taking away Paramount, CBS, all of Turner? I had the story up from Front Office Sports. Our friend Ryan Glassbeagle, his outlet had some really good reporting on that. And they're upping their charges. You guys, just get cable. Stop dicking around and just get DirecTV. Yeah, it's expensive, but you actually get all of the channels. Like, isn't it exhausting to pay full cable price for YouTube TV and still have to find a way to watch the regional sports networks? Well, I watch it on crack streams. Okay. What do you have a GED? Did you not finish high school? I'm not watching on cracked streams. Every once in a while I will. Like, I used to pay for League Pass when I was single during the pandemic. I had nothing to do. So that I get. Like, I'm probably not going to pay for League Pass just for the 1 or 2 times a week I want to throw on an NBA game because I'm bored. This is different. These are our Brewers. These are our teams. Just get cable. Don't let YouTube TV stick it up your rear end now. Hey, sorry, I know March Madness is coming up, but things are bad right now with CBS. You're just not going to get one of the biggest broadcast channels. I mean, I know you can get an antenna, but if you got to do that, stop paying for YouTube TV. We'll continue. I actually want to read some details about this. Maybe this is worth talking about. 2 minutes. Zach Heilprin when we come back. By the way, if you're a Madison listener, got to find us on a stream because NASCAR is going to take over. New home of NASCAR in Madison. Hour number 2 coming up next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, after a day off, the Badgers got back at the practice floor today as they prep for their trip to number 7 Purdue on Saturday. Wisconsin has just 1 win in West Lafayette in the last 10 years, but they head in having won 3 straight, sitting in 4th place in the Big Ten, 2 games out of 1st place. That's a much better standing than the preseason projections that had them finishing 12th in the conference. One key to their success has been the depth of the team, especially what they've gotten from 2 seniors, Carter Gilmore, Kamari McGee. Coach Greg Gard says the two are what Wisconsin basketball is about.
They've earned it. They've come the long, hard way, and they've had to endure some trials, and they've been doubted along the way publicly. And I'm just happy for them because they've been so persistent, so committed to us and to this program.
Again, it'll be Wisconsin and Purdue on Saturday. Just 7 games left here in the regular season. Tourney the Bucks. They closed out the first half of the season last night. They win in Minnesota. Next up is All-Star festivities in San Francisco this weekend. They are back in action next Thursday when the Clippers come to town.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
If you're interested in a rewarding career with a strong Wisconsin company, Rural Mutual Insurance is looking to add to their growing team of successful employees and agents. Apply online today at ruralmutual.com/careers.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, Wisconsin will have 3 players at the NFL Combine later this month. The league announced the attendees this morning, with offensive lineman Joe Huber and Jack Nelson, along with safety Hunter Wohler, all making the cut for the Badgers. Wisconsin will also hold its pro day early next month, and the Brewers continue to ramp up down in Arizona as spring training gets going. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
2-point edge after the 2 free throws from Brooke Lopez. Edwards. That's a 3-pointer. This is for the lead. Rips it down. Kuzma with a big defensive rebound. Game over. Time runs out. The Bucks survive in Mini.
Last game before the break, proud of our group for being resilient. Basketball game runs, we stuck with it, and now we get a chance to rest. But big second half of the season coming up, man. Let's get it, man. Go Bucks.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Got some text coming in, some YouTube TV watchers. Says YouTube TV because if you pay for premium, you can have unlimited users. Got half of my family and then some on mine for $100. Same with DirecTV. Do you know how many devices? Do you know how many houses I have? I don't share it with my family. I don't know what the price is, but it gets all the channels. I can watch all the games. Zach in Altoona says, do you have a GED? Did you not finish high school? Wow. Coming in hot at your listeners of low socioeconomic status, huh, Grant? Good luck. I would bet that, I would bet that those who either have a GED or do not have some fancy-dancy college degree, I bet they make as much or more than me. This is not a socioeconomic thing. I'm like, do you folks like coming home and needing to plug in an HDMI to your laptop to get cracked screens on your TV, and then it lags out, so you need to get up and you need to go refresh, and then you need to close a bunch of windows? Do you really want to live that? You don't have to live that way. Just get cable. You're already paying as much or more with all the individual things. Zach does continue after giving me some guff. That's actually good to know that YouTube TV is dropping sports carriers, though. Well, it's not dropping sports carriers, it's dropping CBS. As an unfortunate subscriber, I split the account with 2 other people, and it's pretty easy to do. But yeah, gets frustrating when you can't watch a Saturday night Milwaukee Bucks game in the middle of Wisconsin or the Brewers. Like if YouTube TV carried FanDuel Sports Network or Bally Sports, or before that when Fox Sports Wisconsin was dropped by Hulu and YouTube TV and the like. Like if you're not a sports fan, fine. But if you're not a sports fan, why do you need live TV? Just get the streaming platforms for whatever shows you're trying to watch. That's what I don't get. This is from Front Office Sports. Eric Fisher. The bumpy transition into a streaming-led media industry could leave many viewers without March Madness and the Masters this spring. That's right. Masters on CBS as well. Paramount-owned channels, including CBS on broadcast and the CBS Sports Network, are set to go dark Thursday on YouTube TV, the 4th largest U.S. pay TV subscriber with more than 8 million. The sides have been unable to reach a new carriage agreement, and the dispute is escalating just weeks before a key moment in the annual sports calendar for CBS, with 2 high-profile events upcoming. Quote from YouTube TV said in a blog post. They must have posted this directly. Paramount is an important partner for us, and as you can imagine, this is not the outcome we want. We're still in active conversations with Paramount and hopeful that we can come to an agreement to keep their content available. The blackout scheduled to go in effect 11 Eastern tonight. Contract battle arrived just weeks after YouTube TV raised its prices by $10 a month. It's $83 a month for YouTube TV. Already no RSNs. I could stomach this if I was a YouTube TV subscriber, which I'm not. But if I was, and I could get the Brewers and the Bucks, I could use an antenna for CBS. The antenna is great. I think it's a weapon that everyone should have in their television room or their den or whatever. But okay, so I'm already not getting the RSNs. Now I need to pull out an antenna. Why am I paying for you? Well, dozens of channels with great shows. Well, I can get that day after or live on streaming anyways. Live television exists currently for most, for live sports and for politics. And if you can't give me the live sports, I'll just save money and get the other crap elsewhere. This is so frustrating to me. YouTube TV said it would give its customers an $8 credit if the Paramount content, quote, is unavailable for an extended period of time. Though there were no immediate specifics on how long it would take to trigger that offer. Of course there aren't. Its own specially created webpage, Paramount touted the popularity of its programming among YouTube TV subscribers. I mean, this is great for Paramount. It's like, these guys aren't going to let this hang through March Madness and the Masters. They'll lose everybody. I saw a lot of people tweeting about how they were dropping it this morning. And I don't think it's like, I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl. Like, if you're tweeting about dropping YouTube TV, you're probably dropping YouTube TV. It just bothers me. John says, wow, DirecTV gets Peacock. You got to get Peacock anyway. You got to get it anyways. I already have Peacock. It's a good streamer and cheap too. A lot of good stuff on Peacock. So that's what I'm saying. We all have the streamers, and most of us have some form of live distributed with cable or otherwise. I don't know technically what YouTube TV counts as, just like Hulu Live TV or whatever. Just get cable. That's where this is going to end up. That's where this is going to end up. That's where we're all going. So just skip all of the nonsense. We'll just get there, and then we don't have to worry about this. And I know YouTube TV has Sunday NFL Ticket. I know we're getting boned every which way as consumers. We don't need to keep talking about this. Just a rant. Something that bothers me deeply, even though I'm not a subscriber to YouTube TV. This one says, I want to spend less money on my crack streams than the Brewers spend on free agents. Yeah, look, if you have the stomach and the attention span to plug an HDMI into an old laptop and set it up next to your TV and then close it, but not all the way is to shut the screen off. And then every 5 minutes, if you're lucky, when it needs to be refreshed, go up there, click, close, click, close, click. Like if you can do that, you're a better man than me. I'm sorry to come at those without a GED. Maybe it was a bad analogy. But like, we can be better than that. We can do better than that. Stop. As a one-off, crack streams is pretty great. But just saying, as a one-off and nothing else. Why don't we talk a little bit about what happened with the Jets today? Did you guys see the Jets statement? They officially announced what we all kind of knew as of last week. They're moving on from Aaron Rodgers. Here, I will, I'll do two things for you here. It's more than YouTube TV can do for you at the moment. I will throw the Jets statement on the live stream, as well as read it for our radio audience, our simulcast audience. By the way, NASCAR, your new home for, or WOZN, your new home for NASCAR in Madison. So they have a qualifier for Daytona, so you're going to have to watch on the live stream or listen on Sports Talk 105.1, WKTY. You're going to have to listen some other way. Sorry to our Madison crowd. This is what the Jets tweeted. Last week, we met with Aaron and shared that our intention was to move in a different direction at quarterback. It was important to have this discussion now to provide clarity and to enable each of us the proper time to plan for our respective futures. We want to thank him for his leadership, passion, and dedication he brought to the organization and wish him success moving forward. That is a joint statement from head coach Aaron Glenn and general manager Darren Moogie. Did they hire a GM? I have no memory of that, which I guess isn't surprising. We don't know who any of these GM candidates are. Continued. This is a statement directly from Chairman Woody Johnson. It's just such a funny nickname. I personally want to thank Aaron for his time with the New York Jets. His arrival in 2023 was met with unbridled excitement, and I will forever be grateful that he chose to continue his Hall of Fame career with us. From day one, he embodied all that it meant to be a New York Jet, which is kind of a funny thing to say. Embraced our fans and immersed himself in our city. That is what I will remember most when I look back at his time here. He will always be welcome, and I wish him only the best in whatever he chooses to do next. Okay, so it's a little bit, open season on Aaron Rodgers today. I listened to Cowherd's lead. And he's talking about, now this is the second team to dump Aaron Rodgers. The Jets dumped him, just like the Packers dumped him 2 years ago, and now he's looking for another team. God only knows if someone wants him, right? I think teams will want him. But this is the sentiment today. Aaron Rodgers, the Jets, a massive failure. Aaron Rodgers failed in his quest to come with the Jets and win. Aaron Rodgers shoved out the door by the Jets. They don't want him anymore. Okay. I would like to state something for the record, if I may. Far be it from me to defend Aaron Rodgers, but I think on a day like today, someone has to. If Rodgers didn't tear his Achilles, which is a big if, I know. We live in the world where he did. But let's just pretend for a moment that he never tore his Achilles. Don't you think that the additions of players like Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, and then the coaching addition of Nathaniel Hackett, don't you think those additions make a little bit more sense? And we're not spending all of last year, 2 years ago now, 2 seasons ago now, wondering, oh my God, what a bad coach. Oh my God, what a bad ad. Oh my God. those additions were made with Aaron in mind. And I guess we can have an extended conversation about if a player should be able to, have sway like that in a front office. Should a player be able to bring okay, well, that's a separate conversation. But all of those players, those moves were made with Aaron in mind. And then Aaron got hurt. And Aaron's not perfect. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's better than Tom Brady and he's misunderstood. I think he's understood very well. He's on McAfee once a week. He's got a documentary on Netflix. We all know who Aaron is, okay? He's not perfect, and he's not Tom Brady. Nobody is. He's probably not even Peyton Manning, but again, we're talking about the best of the best. I think the last 2 years are much more of an indictment on the Jets than they are on Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, Rodgers isn't perfect. A little dramatic, and he likes to throw little pieces of chum to the media, and then those turn into stories, and it's a whole thing with him. I understand that. He was here for almost 20 years. I know who he is. You know who he is. We all know who he is. We all have probably different interpretations and different levels of approval of who he is, but we all know who he is, okay? The last 2 years are so much more of an indictment on the Jets than they were on Rodgers. They said, oh, Aaron, come save us. Oh, Aaron, make us relevant. Oh, Aaron, help us compete. And then he gets there, and he blows out his Achilles, and the entire thing goes in the tank. Immediately. Robert Saleh can't handle this, right? Their general manager and owner can't handle that. It's a tire fire. And it got to the point this last year, and again, I'm not defending Aaron Rodgers, but at age 40 or 41 off an Achilles, I think he was fine. I think he was as good as you could expect one to be this last year. But they're trading premium picks for the carcass of Devontae Adams. They're just it's just not a serious outfit. And it bothers me a little bit, and I think it's a little unfair that Aaron Rodgers is being blasted for an injury that was out of his control, and he's being blasted for the failures of a franchise that doesn't know up from down. So yes, Rodgers isn't perfect, and he deserves some criticism. But the idea that this is some stain on Rodgers' legacy, that he was unable to succeed with the Jets. Yeah, he didn't go in there and light it up like Brady did or Manning did, but nobody thought that Rodgers was Brady or Manning, at least the last couple of years. 10 years ago, we thought that maybe he'd get there. He never did. Okay, no one's confusing Aaron Rodgers at this stage of his career with Manning or Brady or Montana, who went elsewhere and had success to varying degrees on secondary teams after they left their first team. Manning in Denver, Brady in Tampa, right? Bill was talking earlier today about Joe Montana goes to the Chiefs, at least takes them to the playoffs, right? They play winning football on some level. Yes, Rodgers did not have that. He also had a catastrophic injury and went to play for maybe the most dysfunctional team in the league. So I just think it's a little unfair that Rodgers is the one who has to wear all of this. And we're treating the Jets like there's some victim in all of this. The Jets are morons. Woody Johnson is an awful owner. And the general manager, even before he was stripped of all power, did a lot of dumb things. And Robert Saleh, God love him, just wasn't up to snuff. That's not Rodgers' fault. And also people talk about Rodgers. Well, he demanded his way out of Green Bay, kicking and screaming. No, I don't know if that's fair and accurate. I think it came to a mutual end, mostly because the Packers drafted his successor and were ready to move on. It's not like Rodgers was winning Super Bowls in Green Bay and pissed and moaned his way out of there. It came to a natural end. So I'm all for reasonable and accurate criticism of Aaron Rodgers. I think it's gone a little overboard. I think the Jets are the party in all of this who deserve to wear the failure of the last 2 years a lot more. Back to your phone call, 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Good afternoon. It's Darnell.
Good afternoon, Darnell. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing wonderful. I just to piggyback on the Jets there a little bit. Not only did they butcher the last two seasons of the NFL, but it looks like when you jettison a player, do you still have to pay a salary? That's correct, right? Like they're still going to have to pay his salary for 2020.
Yeah, they're going to be hit with a bunch of dead money, and the salary ramifications moving forward for them are a mess. Yes.
So another team can basically have Aaron Rodgers as their QB1 and pay him next to nothing on their books that year.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. It's going to be Russell Wilson all over again, and I think Kirk Cousins is much of the same. He's going to be able to go sign somewhere for basically a song, and Atlanta's going to pay him.
Exactly. So, like, not only did you fumble the time you actually had with him, now that he's gone, you're going to pay another team to play Aaron Rodgers, future Hall of Famer. And also, this past year, again, not trying to defend the guy, but he had the exact same stats as Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
The exact same stats.
And I think some of
bad.
those he wasn't bad. I don't think he was as good as some of those stats would lead you to believe. They were trailing a lot, so he threw the ball a lot. The turnover avoidance was, even to a diminished level, still very good at this advanced age for him, the advanced age for an athlete. Like, he wasn't a mess. He wasn't Kirk Cousins, right? Like, there have been much worse aging quarterbacks, especially considering he's coming off an Achilles. That's why I'm saying, guys, it didn't work, and Rodgers bears some responsibility, but the Jets should be wearing this, and their dead cap hit moving next year, according to this at least, is $49 million. I'm going to try to get that really nailed down and have good information for you.
Also, didn't this iteration of the Jets this year kind of feel like the Brooklyn Nets in 2010 with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce?
Oh, yeah.
Going to another team and going like, oh, we can win again. And then they just completely face planted the entire year.
A little bit.
And then ended up giving all the draft picks to the Celtics, who turned it into like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like just the Brooklyn Nets just doing what New York teams do. You know what I mean? And that's what the Jets did.
I think Rodgers should be watching his phone, hoping that Mike Tomlin is calling him. I think if he wants to continue playing, that's his best destination. That's where he should want to go. I don't know if the Steelers are interested in him. Those are two different things. Excuse me. That's where Rodgers should want to go, because the Steelers, to me, are everything the Jets symbolize, but they have a culture. They have a coach. They know what they're doing. They're not a perfect roster, but they have some talent, and a quarterback should be able to come in there and win. But they have a coach. They have something that's built already, unlike the Jets.
Is your brain telling you that there is not a 0% chance that he goes to Minnesota and completes the Brett Favre journey?
I think there's very close to a 0% chance, because I don't think. Do you think Minnesota would want that? I think they're like, no, we'll do something else.
I mean, the NFL, the NBA, they're all story-driven leagues, and that is the story of all stories. So who knows?
I mean, with the coaches and the talent, great roster, better roster than Pittsburgh. Better roster than Vegas or Tennessee or some of these other teams he's been linked to by us, not necessarily by anything official.
I guess the better question then is a year of cheap Aaron Rodgers better than J.J. McCarthy coming off a brutal ACL surgery?
Well, I don't know. J.J. McCarthy's discussed like he's the only quarterback who's ever had an injury and then has come back. Like, how significant is that injury? I don't know. But knowing the Vikings, I think they're very smart. I think they'd rather do Daniel Jones as a bridge guy for J.J. McCarthy. Honestly, I think they'd rather do somebody like that. Pass on the drama, pass on all of that, and get mostly the same thing.
Okay, fair enough. But wouldn't they pay less for Rodgers if the Jets pay his contract?
Possibly, but what's the what are we talking about? The difference of $1 million or $2 million? Maybe. The Vikings aren't afraid to spend.
That's fair.
I don't know that the money saved by bringing in Rodgers is going to be the difference for any of these teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Brett Favre going to the Vikings hurt me to my core, and I'm like actively rooting for the Vikings to take Aaron Rodgers just to see what would happen. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. It's a really weird. It's a weird vibe being like in your 20s versus a young teenager. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird. It's a weird feeling, but I'm kind of rooting for it just for the drama. But who knows?
It might be good for the drama. I also don't want them to lose to Rodgers and the Vikings. Talk show host is intrigued. Fan and owner is not. I think it's Pittsburgh. I don't think Minnesota wants to be a part of that business. I'm not even sure that Pittsburgh does, and I think it makes more sense for Pittsburgh. They don't have a successor. They don't have a guy waiting to come in like Minnesota does. We'll continue talking about this. I have some audio from some different shows, some takes that were being thrown around about this today, so we'll get to that next. Temple and Heilbronn, I believe, coming up at 6 o'clock, or Thorson and Heilbronn, excuse me. I actually haven't asked Zach or Ebo, so I'm going to check with them to make sure they're at Monks and Sun Prairie before I start hyping that up. So I got a lot to do over this break. Let's just say 3 minutes. We'll be back.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
This sums it up to me. The Jets aren't getting rid of him because of his play. Even though he wasn't vintage Aaron Rodgers or even close, they're probably not going to get a better quarterback than what they had last year. I mean, and I know he didn't play as well as these numbers suggest, but still, these are the numbers. He was 8th in the league in passing yards per game and total. He was 7th in the league in touchdown passes. He threw more touchdown passes than Mahomes. 28 touchdown passes, 11 picks. I mean, again, he probably didn't play as well as those numbers, but if he's viewed as a culture killer now. That's what he's viewed as. And if he weren't viewed as that, I think there's no doubt the Jets would have brought him back.
See, it's that last comment from Chris Broussard. That's from First Things First today. He's viewed as a culture killer. I'm sorry. Are we supposed to believe that the Jets had this amazing culture and Rodgers came in and ruined it? That's not what happened here. If you're just joining the show, by the way, welcome. Talking a little bit about the Jets making it official today, putting out a statement. We are moving on from Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so Rodgers and the Jets didn't work out. But I'm trying to defend the guy a little bit because everyone on sports television and sports radio today is like, what a failure. What a stain on Rodgers' legacy. Like, well, he certainly didn't advance his legacy. He didn't further his legacy. And he's a little eccentric and, draws a lot of attention, gets a lot of headlines. But I think these last 2 years are a way bigger indictment on the Jets than they are on Rodgers. They blew out their general manager, their head coach. I mean, the owner's bringing his kids into the locker room. He's like, this is the most talented team we've ever had. They had teams go to the conference championship game about a decade ago. Like, Rodgers wasn't great. He wasn't Brady in that he came in and immediately lit it up. He wasn't Manning in that he rolled into team number 2 and immediately lit it up. But no one thought he was Brady before this. No one thought he was Manning before this. He is comfortably, maybe the 5th best quarterback of all time, maybe a little lower. Maybe some big fans might have him a little higher, right? No one thinks he's Brady. No one's thought that for a while. Once upon a time, we thought maybe, but no one's thought that for a while. So I don't know how everyone's like, Rodgers let the Jets down. The Jets are a mess. I'm sure Rodgers is perfectly fine getting out of there. And I guess if no team wants him, he'll retire. He's got a mountain of money. He can go travel the world and do all the things that he loves to do. Rodgers isn't perfect. He presents some problems to organizations, but if he goes to the Steelers, I kind of want to see him go to the Steelers. Here's why. I think it's the best possible place for him to go to. I think they are the Jets with a coach. They're the Jets with a culture in that their roster has some talent on it. It's not perfect. The Jets aren't nearly as talented as many were saying a year or two ago. They have some nice players. The Steelers have some nice players. They're not perfect, but they have some nice players. And that's a place where Rodgers could come in and play bona fide, real competitive football. The difference between the Jets and the Steelers is they have an identity. They have a coach. They have a culture. They can absorb Rodgers. Whereas Rodgers gets to New York and the Jets didn't know what to do with the guy. That's not a Rodgers problem. That's a Jets problem. So Rodgers isn't perfect. I'm not saying he's perfect, but the Jets are kind of skating off scot-free and all the heat's going on Rodgers. This destroyed his legacy. I kind of ascribe to the idea that it's really difficult for your legacy to go backwards unless you kill someone, unless something insane happens. I think your legacy climbs. And if your career plateaus, I don't think your legacy starts going backwards. I just don't think it goes further. So I don't view these last 2 years for Rodgers as a retreat of his legacy. I don't think he's been knocked down any pegs. He just did not advance his legacy further the way that Manning did in Denver or the way that Brady did in Tampa Bay, which isn't surprising because no one thinks he's Brady. No one thinks he's Manning, right? 608-321-1670. Lots of open phone lines if you want to get in. You won't have to wait very long. You can grab them. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. This is G-Dub.
Hey, G-Dub. G-Dub, what is with this narrative that I'm cutting people off on the air? Everyone was saying this in the morning show. I didn't cut Mike and Portage off. What the hell?
I was just going to give you a update on the road conditions right now. Roads are clear. Can't say the same for tomorrow, but roads are clear.
Well, I'm glad.
So, Mike said he'd give you an update on the roads, and then you cut him off within like 30 seconds. That was the thing.
He was on for 2 or 3 minutes. And by the way, the idea is I wrap up the phone call and say thank you for the call before we run out of things to talk about. I don't want to let it go a minute or two too long, and everyone's like, all right, come on, wrap. Like, I got to make a judgment call. I think we had a nice call. It was ready to move on.
I know. I was going to try to piggyback off of his call, but you Mike's call, but you caught me. Anyways, isn't it ironic that Rodgers went into the darkness and then seen the light?
He does a darkness retreat once, and then that's I get what you're saying. Did he do another darkness retreat this offseason?
Yeah, exactly. The moral of the story Rodgers should learn from this is go towards the light, not the darkness. But,
I suppose.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Isn't it ironic? Isn't it just ironic? He went into the darkness to go to the Jets. He probably sat in there. What, he sitting there for like 8 days? Thought about it for 8 days in the dark, and then they let him go.
This is another thing. I just want to make sure we're being fair because G-Dub, you strike me as someone. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before. You don't strike me as someone who hates Rodgers and thinks he's the worst. Like you. No. I think you have a pretty middle of the road, reasonable take on Rodgers. Like I try to.
Absolutely.
People act like Rodgers kicked and screamed his way out of Green Bay. I want to go to the Jets. The Packers didn't want him anymore. And the way I remember it, the Jets were like the only other team that did. That was the one place for him to go to. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, exactly. I'm a fan of Rodgers. I agree with you 110% on your take on the whole Rodgers thing. 100%.
I just think we're being a little unfair to him. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Don't hang up on me, okay?
I won't if you have something else to say. What else? Otherwise, I am going to hang up on you. That's how it works.
No. That was just my whole point is that Rodgers went into the darkness, and it's just all came full circle to him. He went into the darkness and then seen the light. That's all.
I want him to. What was that? You're going to hang up and listen? Is that what you're going to say?
Oh, no, I was going to say, isn't it ironic? I was going to quote Alison Morissette song.
I like that. I like that. I'm coming to. I really want to come to G-Dub Fest or whatever you guys call it in Appleton. When is that?
Palooza? Are you coming? March 21st.
Is that a Friday?
It's a Friday.
All right, I don't think I have an excuse. I have a wedding in Mexico. As long as that's not that week, I should be able to come. Ebo's going, so I'll just try to ride with him.
Mark, you got to come, Grant. You got to come. Even though you hate Appleton, you just got to show up. Just do it.
I don't hate Appleton. I like to poke fun because folks like you, G-Dub, you like to fight back. I appreciate the call. Thank you for the call. I hope you didn't have another rant or something you wanted to say. I didn't know Mike and Portage was so sensitive about his airtime on this show. Again, apologies to Mike. So I guess everyone on the morning show, Grant, you ran Mike off the air. I'm like, no, I thought we had a nice chat. And then I concluded it at the proper time. That's how I remember last night's show. You know what? Maybe I'll pull up the audio. Maybe we can listen back. We can decide together. Zach in Altoona says, I've been waiting for someone else to have the same take on Rodgers for weeks. He's slightly eccentric and a self-involved person based on a lot of what we see that's not behind closed doors. But blaming him for everything that's wrong with the Jets is beyond dumb. The Jets are probably one of the biggest jokes in the league. Yeah, Woody Johnson is making decisions on Madden ratings, and his kids are giving out game balls in the locker room. That's not on Rodgers. And Rodgers, he decided that he was ready to leave Green Bay and that he was ready to go to the Jets. The Packers were ready to move on. The Jets were the only other team that was really a good option. So everyone talks about it. Everyone looks back. It's like he kicked and screamed his way out of Green Bay. He had such a good thing going and he wanted to leave and he wanted to go to the Jets. No, the Packers were ready to move on. And Rodgers was like, all right, I guess the Jets want me. That's my next home. That's it. Like, that's how it happened. So Rodgers isn't perfect. No one thinks he's Brady or Manning, so don't grade him on that curve. That's just silly. I don't know. I just think he's taken a little more heat than he deserves. Bro blew his Achilles and came back this year, played in all the games, and by the end of the year was actually playing okay football, which okay football for the New York Jets gets you a terrible season because they're a terribly run team. Let's take a break. Couple minutes. We'll come back. Continue the show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
This sums it up to me. The Jets aren't getting rid of him because of his play. Even though he wasn't vintage Aaron Rodgers or even close, they're probably not going to get a better quarterback than what they had last year. I mean, and I know he didn't play as well as these numbers suggest, but still, these are the numbers. He was 8th in the league in passing yards per game and total. He was 7th in the league in touchdown passes. He threw more touchdown passes than Mahomes. 28 touchdown passes, 11 picks. I mean, again, he probably didn't play as well as those numbers, but if he's viewed as a culture killer now. That's what he's viewed as. And if he weren't viewed as that, I think there's no doubt the Jets would have brought him back.
A culture killer. It's just funny to me, and I find myself defending Aaron Rodgers today. He killed the Jets culture. That's what we're going with now? That's the narrative that we're spinning? Narrative is such an obnoxious and overused word. That's the take. Look, the Jets are a disaster. And Rodgers is no Brady. He's no Manning. But the way that the sports world has completely and totally put this on the plate of Aaron Rodgers, I think on some levels the Jets let him down. Now, I think Rodgers could have done some things better, sure. Most superstar athletes are not quite perfect, right? Luka with the conditioning, right, for one. Maybe players are brilliant, but they're a little injured. But, they all have something. That's why Brady and LeBron, all these guys, the athletes that are truly mostly without blemish. Wow, LeBron and China. Okay, I'm talking about, actual legit sports shortcomings. You know what I mean? So, yeah, Rodgers has got some things. But I think the Jets, for the most part, let him down, not the other way around. This text just says, who do you recommend helping book vacation trips? I don't know if that's addressed to me. That might be addressed to Bill. The best coach in Wisconsin, new texter. The best coach in Wisconsin is about to begin the season for the Brewers. Murphy does not make excuses, and neither do the players. Doc is meh, and I'm losing confidence in LaFleur as they didn't win against elite competition last year. Interesting. Not what we're talking about. But I appreciate the text and plenty of phone lines if you want to call and chat. 608-321-1670. I just got to defend Aaron Rodgers a little bit today because I know he's an easy target, and a lot of that is because he puts a target on himself. But he's a culture killer. He killed the Jets culture. That's what we're supposed to believe. That's the take. I don't know. I just don't know if I buy into all of that. Not sure about that. I don't know. I just don't think that's fair. That's all. That's all. And I think that's reasonable. Earlier on in the show, we were talking Bucks a little bit. Free to take your thoughts on that, or the Brewers as well. Alex Bregman signing with the Red Sox, which to us matters because he's not with the Cubs, right? The fact that if he were to go to the Cubs and then they get Bregman and Presley, and all right, they added some legit talent. I just don't think paying money for relievers is ever good business. I know, because the Brewers are really good at bringing along pitchers and relievers, and they very rarely pay money for them. And whether their closer turns out to be McGill or Mizorowski or whoever, Pyamps, whoever it turns out to be, I have a decent feeling that they'll make it work. So anytime you're in a place where you're paying exorbitant money for relievers or acquiring relievers for actual assets, I don't like that. Cubs had to do that. But Kyle Tucker is legit, and Alex Bregman would have been legit. Here's Craig Counsell on the Bregman saga. This is very Counsell. We've heard this soundbite a million times.
Well, I think it's like, look, it's a reality. So it's one of those deals where, you're interested in a really good player, and I think someone else got him, and you're disappointed, and you move on. It's just how on the field, I think that's how you have to approach it, and I think that's how I approach it.
Did you not ever get too far ahead of yourself, knowing that this was out of your control most of the way, and that you just had to wait for it to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of getting updates like everybody else, heard the news like everybody else. So
I heard the news like everybody else. It's just very Counsell, very interesting. And I was joking with a friend texting about this guy who loves baseball. It's like, I thought that when Craig Counsell first got to Chicago, we read all these stories about, well, he's going to be an integral part of not just managing the team, but also baseball operations and, from top to bottom. And then today he's basically like, I got updates, but I heard about it just like you.
Just had to wait for it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of getting updates like everybody else, heard the news like everybody else. So
an electric soundbite, as always. We did the Brewers spending conversation a little bit ago. I'm just kind of recapping the show before we take our final break. And the Bucks, I really like that win last night. No Giannis, no Dame. It's not a game that I planned to watch. I ended up watching it, and I really liked what I saw from Gary Trent. Yeah, he made shots, but it was more the look in his eyes, right? The intensity, the competitiveness. That's a game that these guys wanted. So an opportunity to celebrate that as a group going into the break. I just think that's really important. That was really nice to see. And my complaint earlier this week on Tuesday was, when Dame and Giannis aren't out there, this doesn't really look like a functioning basketball operation. You know what I mean? Like, kind of looks like a G League team. So not only the fact that they won last night, but they appeared to have a clue as to what they were doing. That meant a lot. And awesome to steal a win against a mostly healthy Minnesota team without your two stars. And they're a star-centric team now, especially moving Middleton off. It's Dame and Giannis and then everybody else. Let's take a call, then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. This is Will from the UP.
Hey, what's going on, Will?
Not much. First of all, I just want to say love the show. I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
But curious about your take that the Jets let Rodgers down more than he let them down. But I feel like the Jets gave Rodgers everything he requested, from Cobb to Lazard to bringing in Devontae. Like they let him run the show. So I guess, how can you say they let him down more than he let them down?
And I said earlier on in the show too, like I would like to see what the last 2 years would have looked like had Rodgers not hurt his Achilles. You know what I mean? Because when he hurt his Achilles, that was almost analogous to, when an NBA player goes to the bench and it's like, you guys just have to hold the fort. You guys need to avoid melting down. You know what I mean? So Rodgers gets hurt and the whole team eats itself, and the owner and the general and the coach, like it completely crumbles. And when Rodgers then came out of the lineup, right, of course, all of the players that they brought in to play with him, they're not having awesome seasons because they were brought in with him in mind. And same with Nathaniel Hackett. I just think if he goes to Pittsburgh and he suffers an injury, he's got to miss time. There's a framework. There's a culture. There's something established. And the Jets put everything they had into Rodgers. And then when Rodgers gets hurt, the Jets had nothing. I guess that's kind of what I mean when the Jets let Rodgers down. And Rodgers, look, when he comes in and talks about Super Bowls, Will, like, he was probably never going to live up to that. So Rodgers could have been better as well. But it's like we're only bad-mouthing Rodgers right now, and I just don't think that's fair.
Agreed. I don't think it's fair there. I think it's the culture there let Rodgers down, but I think the Jets themselves, gave him exactly what he asked for, and it didn't work. And I think they're foolish for not giving him another season. He was just coming back from injury, and they got a lot of things in place with some good receivers and a top draft pick. I think they're foolish for not seeing what could have happened this year. But just wanted to call and appreciate the show, and have a good evening.
Yeah, you as well, Will. Thanks for listening up there. I was in the UP just a couple weeks ago. Very pretty. And I'm excited to go back up there in the summer. We got a Marquette weekend planned this summer. Go up and jump in the lake, and it's bright outside until like 10:45. I love it. So thank you for listening, Will, and thank you for calling. Look, all of those moves were made with Rodgers in mind. So it's very easy for us once Rodgers gets hurt to say, oh, Randall Cobb sucks, Allen Lazard sucks. Well, yeah, they're not great, but they were brought in, they were signed, or they were acquired to play with Rodgers. You know what I mean? It'd be like if you, and this analogy is probably going to piss some people off because for whatever reason, electric cars are controversial. You don't want an electric car, fine. But it would be like if you bought an electric car and an electric charger, and then all of a sudden you changed your mind and you bring home a Cadillac. It's like, oh, a nice electric charger on the wall. Why do you have that, dumbass? It's like, well, yeah, it was for the other car. It was for the car I don't have anymore. It was for the car that's on the injured list, right? And it's not commentary on the effectiveness of electric cars. It's just an analogy. Like, oh, nice charger, dumbass. Like, it's not for that car. It was for something else. So, yeah, it's easy to poke fun at Hackett and Cobb and Lazard. And I would just prefer that Rodgers play well with good players, but he needs, his kind of players. All right, whatever. I just think it's easy to blast those players and those moves when they were made with Rodgers in mind. It wasn't Rodgers' fault that he got hurt. Now, I kind of wish we could see him on the Jets for one more year too. But I understand why the Jets are moving on. I think a big part of it is that Aaron Glenn is taking over, and he's like, I'm not starting my NFL head coaching career under the game plan of, well, let's try one more year and see what happens. Like, if I was getting an NFL head coaching shot, and you never know if you're going to get a second, I probably wouldn't want to start it in those circumstances either. Like, he wants a clean slate. The Jets financially want a clean slate. This is from WJTV in New York. Liam McCone, CBS Channel 12 News, focused on you. Not sure. It was just the first link that came up. It's what Google AI threw at me when I searched Aaron Rodgers dead cap hit. Aaron Rodgers' time with the New York Jets is over and done with. Blah, 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 blah. Attention to now exactly how they will do so. Because of the path the Jets chose to get Rodgers off the roster will cost the organization some money and, more importantly, cap room. As explained by Adam Schefter in the wake of the Jets' confirmation, Rodgers carries $49 million in dead cap for this year. It's a lot of money. New York has two options. Should it elect to cut Rodgers outright? As to how far to deal with that money, if the franchise cuts Rodgers right now, $40 million dead cap will be carried in full on this year's sheet. If the franchise designates Rodgers as a post-June 1 cut, the Jets can spread that dead cap out over 2 years. I feel like they should just eat it now. They're not trying to contend. I mean, unless they're, targeting like Matt Stafford or another veteran quarterback, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think a big reason why they're moving on is because of the money and because Aaron Glenn is now the coach. I think it would make sense to keep him around and use him as a bridge quarterback, but I also think Woody Johnson and Aaron Rodgers, I think that thing was kind of done too. And if I'm Rodgers, I don't blame him. Like, having to deal with that mess the last 2 years. And again, Rodgers isn't perfect. I understand that. I just think he needs to be defended today to a certain degree because it's open season on a guy who tore his Achilles last year. It's not his fault. Take a 3-minute break. We'll wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. Wisco Sports Show will resume. The Wisco Sports Show will resume. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. Last couple of minutes. Appreciate you listening tonight. The live stream, it's always YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. At Wisco Grant on Twitter. The podcast will go up just after 6 o'clock. And every once in a while, a little PSA. If you listen on the radio every night, you love the show, you just listen on your way home. Appreciate that. If you are someone who listens to podcasts, though, man, I'd appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. Because it helps my numbers a little bit. It helps me out. And if you're a podcast listener, I mean, Jesus, if you listen to the podcast every day, I hope you subscribe. Please throw me a bone. But appreciate it. You know, the YouTube, the Facebook page, if you just subscribe, throw me a like or throw me a click. It doesn't take very long. Helps me out. Boosts my numbers a little bit. Makes me a more valuable employee to my company. That sort of thing. I got a texture over the break. I agree with this. I hope Rodgers can land somewhere and make a run. No idea where that is. Maybe wait until a quarterback gets hurt. I've always been in Rodgers' corner, brought the Packers decades of success. Yes. I also think Rodgers, when in Green Bay, had a very stable organization with a culture, with a lot of direction and control, right? He wasn't some, ringleader in a madhouse like the Jets. Like, what a mess. Right? I also think as Rodgers aged, he got more confident. He was more outspoken. He liked to do things outside of football, right? He grew into himself a little bit. And these quarterbacks, as they get older, Brady, to a lesser degree, because Brady was just so football. But, Manning at the end, like all of these quarterbacks in their own little ways get kind of weird. I think Rodgers is an extreme example, but it's not a crime to be a little weird. I mean, Jesus, we gather to talk about sports for 2 hours a night on the radio in 2025. Who are we to judge? But Rodgers is not perfect. I keep saying this, and I'm going to say it again because it drives home my point. No one thinks Rodgers is Tom Brady, right? No one thinks he's Peyton Manning. So why would we grade him? Why to say that he's a culture killer? Oh, he came into New York and he killed the culture. That would indicate that New York had a culture. The Jets had a really good. They didn't. They were a mess. To say, well, Rodgers is a culture killer. Well, no, maybe Rodgers needs an organization with some foundation, with some heft. That's why I think Pittsburgh makes all the sense in the world. Rodgers should want to go there. My question is if the Steelers and Steelers fans have the appetite to do that, because they dealt with Big Ben, who was old for 3 years. Big Ben played until 2021. Doesn't that blow your mind? Feels like he retired almost 10 years ago. The dude was playing into this decade. He was so old and decrepit, and he couldn't throw the ball down the field. And then they do Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges and Kenny Pickett, and then they do Justin Fields and Russell Wilson for your like Steelers fans. I can't imagine have the opportunity or the attitude, I should say, to do that. They are a lesser, to a lesser degree, they're like Colts fans. Colts fans have done old Phillip Rivers, washed Carson Wentz, old Matt Ryan. Like they don't, old Joe Flacco. They're like, I don't want to do that. They don't want old Aaron Rodgers. They don't want to just keep doing this. The Steelers fans have not been pushed that far. They don't have a string of old guys, but it's just like one fill-in, one stand-in after another. Like Steelers fans are like, we need to find our guy, I would imagine. And that's fair. That makes sense. But if they're drafting a guy or they want to keep a guy behind the scenes for a year, like why not Aaron Rodgers? Or by the way, this is why the Packers draft quarterbacks 3 years before they need him, is to avoid this. Is to avoid what the Colts have been through and to avoid what the Steelers have been through. And, you know, all these other teams who are just trying to figure out, do we need a stopgap? Do we need to draft the guy? Can he play right away? Can he sit? Like, this is why the Packers draft quarterbacks early. So as maddening as it was to many at the end of the Rodgers era, this is why you do that thing. This is why you do the thing, is to avoid being in a spot that some of these teams are in. And they're like, is Rodgers the answer? If you're trying to win a championship, no, absolutely not. But he might be the best option of the available options for the Steelers. And again, if I'm Aaron Rodgers today, Mike Tomlin call me. I'm looking at my phone. Any messages? FaceTime for Mike Tomlin? Give me a call. There's a lot of mutual respect there, right? I think that would be a fit. If the Steelers are interested, that's something that Aaron Rodgers should definitely be drawn to. Definitely. Maybe he just wants to retire. I think there'd be a certain level of peace in that. He's obviously got a lot of off-field interests. So go nuts. I mean, go absolutely hog wild. Travel the world. Swim with sharks. Go in the jungle. I could do that. Go hike around the mountains. I'd get a house a couple miles outside Westby. Never see me again. Aaron Rodgers should buy property in Westby. That'd be a good investment. Tomorrow, we're going to get ready for Wisconsin-Purdue. A lot of college basketball talk tomorrow night, so I'm looking forward to that. I think it's the biggest sporting event of the week. Obviously, excluding the Super Bowl, which was on Sunday. But this is the main event, Wisconsin-Purdue at Mackey Arena in West Lafayette. South Bend is Notre Dame. West Lafayette is Purdue. It's coming up on Saturday, so we'll talk about it tomorrow. Very much looking forward to it. Never miss a Friday show. I will talk to you